All right, welcome everyone to Helicon West.
Yay!
Yay! We did it. We had to go up some stairs, but isn't this a beautiful room? Like, I think we got upgraded, so I think we're fine, right? I am Brittany, and I will be your MC for this evening. To open us up tonight, I wanted to share a poem I read, just about gathering together. I found it in the Indiana Review this month, and it's called Strawberry Festival by Wesley Sexton. Where I live, they throw parties for fruits. They block a few roads each year and stomp through the streets in celebration of one leaf's time-honored skill of turning sunlight into little helmeted hearts. People dress up, I'm telling you, as strawberries, and tiny children wear knitted strawberry hats, and dogs have been made to prance around in handmade costumes, waiting for the moment when a palm will descend to reveal the ruby red skin of a bright, plump strawberry. Come this year, and you too will see pancakes drowning in the thick, sweet blood of spring strawberries, and people will be dancing like they've just been told their uncles are alive again, were alive the whole time, had seemed cancerous and scrawny, but are themselves dancing after eating only a handful of strawberries. Days after the parade, red-handed strawberry apostles go about offering the bright earth gems to every iteration of the sick and ill. We all wish we could turn the light and air and dirt into something useful, don't we? Watch the way we gather together, wishing this. Watch the way we gather together. What a gift it is. Like when society and medical professionals and logic and our survival brains are telling us to clamp down, that we can all come together and open our voices for a minute.
Yeah.
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 And I am going to pull that off while I'm reading. So thank you all for being here. Helicon West is a live reading series that brings published local writers to read alongside community members in an open, uncensored forum. In order to promote the voice of every community member and democratic ideals, we honor all levels of skill, ability, and craft. In addition to featuring published authors to give the literary arts more exposure in Cache Valley and its surrounding areas, we invite and celebrate aspiring writers from every walk of life to find and share their voices with us. We are committed to the causes of inclusion, accessibility, and representation in our writing community. I would like to thank our sponsors, the Bear River Heritage Area, the Logan Library, Sugar House Review, Utah Humanities, and our founder, Star Colebrook. If you would like to read during the open mic portion of our event following Josi's reading, please find our sign-up sheet near the beverages. After our featured reader, we will get as far down the list as time permits. Each open mic reader has up to 7 minutes of time to read for us, and after 7 minutes, they will politely be clapped off. That's my goal for this Helicon, is to assertively clap at 7 minutes. All of our Helicon West events are recorded and then posted to our Helicon West YouTube channel. If you do not wish to be recorded but would like to read during the open mic, please make a note by your name if you sign up to read so we can turn the camera off during your turn. Alrighty, Helicon West is made possible by our generous sponsors and the community we serve. To help us stay in person until the new Logan Library is built and hydrated and caffeinated, you can make a donation by either leaving your pocket change in our little tip jar, or you can go to sugarhousereview.com/save-helicon-west. And if you email me, I can get that to you too. You can also support our featured reader tonight by purchasing copies of her books on Amazon. Is that the best place to find them, Josi? Perfect. Amazon.com. Okay, our reader tonight, Josi Russell, Her novels explore the familiar human relationships in unfamiliar contexts. She currently teaches creative writing and fiction courses as an associate professor of English for Utah State University Eastern. She lives in the alien landscape of the high desert American Southwest with her family and a giant tortoise named Caesar. Josi is captivated by the fields of linguistics, mathematics, and medicine, by the vast unknown beyond our atmosphere, and by the whole adventure of being human. Please help me welcome Josi.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always frightening, I suppose, and startling to be invited to come and read. It makes you think about all of the things you've written and what possibly you could have that you could share that would fit in the venue. And it's interesting because my very first reading as a published author was at the Strawberry Days Festival in Heber City, and it was I hadn't seen my published book yet. It was that new that I came to the place I was supposed to, the booth where I was doing my reading, and there they were, and I was just amazed for a few minutes about them and kind of forgot that I was supposed to be doing anything besides opening my book. So it's funny that you mentioned the Strawberry Days somewhere, wherever those particular ones were, because that was kind of my first foray into the world of readings, or reading my work aloud, other than when I was, in graduate school and those kinds of things. But anyway, so as I considered what to read, I'm kind of an author with a couple of different genres. I write both in the science fiction genre, and then I have 5 published novels in the science fiction genre and 1 novella, which is an alternate history. So it's science fiction, but kind of a weird side kind of science fiction. And then I also have 10 published cozy mystery novels, and some more to come out this fall. And so I'm going to read a little bit from both of those genres, because they are sort of 2 sides of my writing self. And I think the tie that binds them together, people ask sometimes, what made you go into one or the other? And I think the tie that binds them together is the great what if. It's the great what if. What if this happened, or what if that happened, or what if we had a mystery to solve? And so there's kind of a question of the what if. The first novel I'm going to read from is my 4th published science fiction piece called Shadows of Empyrean. It's the first in a series, and it came after my Caretaker series, which was science fiction space opera, and it was kind of a 3-generation book, and then this one started the beginning of a new series for me. So I'm going to start this. This is it begins on another planet, and on that planet, that planet is in a cycle of destruction. It's being destroyed, and everybody's got to get off. So I'll read you a little bit from it. The Avowed had prophesied that humans would come, and the ships came, as the Avowed had said they would, on a clear day from the east. Small, light landing crafts that eased down to the surface, opened and spilled their passengers out into the intense sunlight. The first humans that stepped onto the Edenic planet of Empyrean were unprepared for what they saw. A sea of humanoid beings, the Snorkel, stood watching the Earthlings come out of the ships. The humans were cautious, tense as they faced the Snorkel. Slightly confused by the striking similarities between themselves and this new race, the Earthlings climbed down and stuck out their hands. They didn't know then that those hands would kill this planet. Look, Seb. This is the first character we meet, and he is fleeing the planet at this point. Look, Seb, I'm sorry about what we did. He gestured broadly, and Seb averted his eyes from the barren hillside that sloped above them. Laska realized that his words, meant to soothe the situation, were making it worse. How could he apologize? How could he make up for what humanity, in its naive curiosity, had done to Seb's planet, to his whole civilization? Laska felt the weight of it, and knew that sometimes there was no apology great enough. The thing had been done, and there was no undoing it. They walked together, this tragedy between them, until the sound of chaos hit. Laska looked up, but he couldn't see what was happening around the mass of people. There was only shouting and slamming doors. Seb's friends broke into a run. "May your journey bring discovery," Seb called as he sped up to catch them. Laska called the traditional parting back to him. Suddenly he felt very alone. 16 ships stood in loose rows, their tapered noses pointed toward the sky. The pilots had started, some of them. Already the heat of their exhaust washed over the crowd. Already their compact Coulombic engines were emitting the high pre-flight whine. Already the pentagonal windows that studded the ships held faces, human and Snorkel, gazing down at the trembling remains of Imperiad. Laska saw Sala boarding the excursion, the big red ship just ahead of him. If he wanted to see her at all for the next few months, he had to make it on that one. The geologist ran as best he could, the suitcase bouncing behind him. The papers on top started to shift. He turned and looked sideways, trying to hold the sweater-wrapped bundle securely on top of his suitcase. He heard a crewman shouting from a ship to his right. "Too many, close the doors." But the ship wasn't full. The passenger limit sign, glowing red above the door, still read 127. The crews were panicking under the press of the crowd. If they weren't filling the ships to capacity, there was even less time. According to the sign, the ship he was heading for still had room for 63 passengers, and he thought he could make it. Gripping his research, he pushed forward. The sweater caught on the arm of a passing biologist, and the bundle fell, spreading Laska's work out on the ground. He cried out and dropped to his knees, scooping and grabbing at the papers as Snorkel and humans rushed past him up the ramp. The bare black stone of Imperiad bit into his knees and scraped his knuckles as he reached for his records. The excursion rushed to life. A wall of heat from the initial reaction in the engine pushed out through the crowd. Many of the papers, now torn and smudged, flew beyond his grasp, and he saw them take flight. Laska watched as his observations scattered back to the slopes and crevices where he had made them. He secured the ones he could reach and scrambled to his feet. He grasped the suitcase handles tighter and ran a hand over his shoulder bag. It was secure. The notebooks with his most valuable data were still there. He could try to replicate some of the observations, but for now he had to get through this crowd and into the cabin on the ship to take stock of what had been lost. Now the limit sign read 20, and there were close to that many in front of him. He moved up the ramp, his eyes on the door. It was a moment's glance. If he had kept his eyes on the door, if he had stepped more quickly, he would have never seen the child. A shining child, about 9 Earth years old, whose turquoise hair caught the light and tossed it back to him, stood at the edge of the ramp, weeping. No one seemed to see her. Even the soldier guarding the door looked past her as he waved to Laska. "Come on, sir, come up here. I'm closing the doors. All citizens of Earth must board now." Laska paused. "Where are your parents?" he asked the child in Snorkel. She looked up. Laska was not prepared for the moment. She looked him in the eye and pointed to the ship. "They're aboard?" "Come on, sir," the soldier was barking. The child nodded. Laska knew what he had to do. He took the little girl's hand and led her through the crush of people. Above the door, the passenger limit sign counted down. 14, 13. People were flowing onto the ship. 12, 11, 10. Laska tried to count, saw that they would make it, but just barely. 9, 8, 7, 6. He was close enough to feel the breeze coming from the ship, and the freshness of it, the taste of rich oxygen, revived him. "It's all right. We'll get you on board and find your parents," he soothed. The girl looked up at him again, nodding earnestly. He sensed that he had just made a promise. The Snorkel viewed statements as facts, as promises. And then they were at the front of the line, and the soldier was reaching for his arm to help him in. The little girl followed, clinging to the geologist's hand. Laska glanced up and stopped. 1. The passenger's limit sign stood at 1. One passenger would be allowed on board. There was no breaking this rule, no bending it. The safety of everyone on board prohibited that. Laska shook his head, trying to think. The little girl would die then. He took the knowledge and held it, blocking out the commands from the soldier. The door was half lowered already, and when he stepped through it, it would close. He disentangled his hand from the child's and took a step forward. He had to get his research back to Earth. There would be nothing left to study here. He had to make it home, but he had promised. Smoothly, Laska swung around. "Sir," the soldier barked. Laska reached for the little girl, lifting her and setting her aboard the ship. She looked at him from across the threshold with wide eyes. The soldier swore and pulled her further into the ship as the door lowered. Frantically, Laska slipped out of his shoulder bag and tossed it under just as the seal hissed on the polished silver door. So one thing I love about writing is the ability to step into other worlds, and not only other worlds on other worlds, but other worlds on our own planet. And as the statement said earlier, I have a passion for a lot of different fields of study. I love pretty much everything. My family can attest that if we go to a museum, and it doesn't matter what kind of museum it is, I can spend forever there. So I love the arts, but I also love, I should say, the sciences. I love mathematics. I love all kinds of different things, and that's the magic of being a writer, is that we get to explore every facet of the world that interests us through our characters, and so as I have written science fiction, I love exploring the ideas that come when we leave our planet, and as I've written the Aloha Chicken Mysteries, I've got to explore a lot of the ideas here on our own planet that I love. And so these books are a lot different than my other books. They're written, I began writing them after we went to Hawaii and after we spent time there. And I was just, the flora and fauna just delighted me. And we had a little family of chickens that lived in our yard when we were there. And we have chickens at our house here in Utah. And so I found myself watching those chickens and finding a lot of similarities in the way they acted. They were feral chickens, and our chickens are spoiled chickens. And so but they were a lot alike. And so I began these books as I like to say, as kind of dessert. I would do my hardcore science fiction writing, and my science fiction is much more space opera, but it took a lot out of me. And so then I started these, and they were kind of like handy to write. So I've enjoyed writing them a lot. The section I'm going to read you now. How much time do I have? I meant to hit my watch, but I didn't do it.
You've still got like 20 minutes. You're totally fine.
Okay, perfect. So the section I'm going to read is from the fourth book. These books there are 10 of them, and they explore the life of a tetrachromatic chicken or egg farmer who inherits an egg farm in Hawaii. And I don't know, tetrachromacy is the ability to see more colors than most people can see. And so it's a really fun sort of superpower that she has that helps her solve mysteries. They're called cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries are, you probably know, but cozy mysteries are mysteries that explore murder mysteries, but not necessarily, true crime or real graphic murder mystery. And so they remain kind of fun and light, even though there's murder. And some of my readers like to call them clean murder. I'm not sure that's a thing, but I like that. I like the phrase. There's always so through the books there's a little thread of romance as well, which is kind of fun, and you hear from some of those, and so you're going to hear a little bit of that. And then always the amazing world around us is what I love to do. So let's see. In this one, the fourth book, she is going out with a new romance, a new romantic interest, and they're going to go snorkeling. He's brought her some some gear. He's a surfer. That's what he does, and he works at a surf shack and he's brought some gear, and they're going to go snorkeling. She's never been before, so that's where we start. Nick's enthusiasm infused the air like plumerian perfume. Saffron almost forgot to be nervous as they maneuvered around the beachgoers and waded into the water. Nick pointed with a free hand toward the coral discs in the surf. "We're going to head over there. It's easy swimming for your first time snorkeling." He had his gear on before Saffron could even figure out which side of her mask was up. These were different than the snorkels she played with in the pool as a kid. These had a hooked snorkel pipe, those had a hooked snorkel pipe, goggles, and an awkward mouthpiece that always made her jaw hurt. These were sleek domes of clear plastic with a seal around the back and a stubby air pipe at the top near the forehead. "How can these possibly work?" Saffron asked. "They're full-face masks," Nick called. "They cover your whole face. You don't have to put anything in your mouth." She nodded, wrestling with the thick rubber strap on the back. "I'll help." Nick splashed close to her, and the two of them swayed with the incoming waves as he reached for the mask. Taking her face in his hand, he carefully swept the hair back from her forehead. Saffron's skin tingled where he touched her. He smelled like salt and sunshine. His hands were gentle as he fitted the mask over her face and eased its rubber strap past her ears. A big wave surprised her by washing in past her hips and lifting her feet from the sandy ocean floor. Saffron scrambled and grasped at Nick, catching his shoulder in one hand and his opposite bicep in the other. Instinctively, she pulled closer to him as he slid his hands around her waist to steady her. The wave retreated and set them down. It felt like dancing. Saffron blinked and breathed, testing the mask and trying to hide her suddenly racing heart. When she looked at Nick, his eyes were on hers. There was a gentle amusement there, evidenced by the light creases reaching from the corners of his eyes. But there was something else there, too, a focus that told Saffron his heart was racing. She stepped backward, floundering, as the next wave bound them. He steadied her again, this time with a single hand on the small of her back, and pulled his mask down with his free hand. "Here you go, Nick said, his voice muffled. He seemed to sense that she wasn't ready for that kind of closeness, and she liked that he pulled back, despite the intensity she'd seen in his eyes. "This way." Saffron watched as he pushed off into the next wave, letting his body go horizontal on top of the water. He reached back for her hand, and she did her best to follow his example. Nick's strong hand closed around hers, and together they half swam, half floated into deeper water. The feeling of swimming through the water with the help of the fins was incredible. Every kick rocketed Saffron through the warm, gentle waves. The sounds of the beachgoers cut off abruptly as Saffron lowered her face into the water. It took a bit of deliberate effort to overcome her initial resistance to the motion, but once her face was submerged, she was riveted on a little meandering blue fish. She pointed excitedly and turned to Nick, see Nick's million-dollar smile flashing back at her. He mouthed the words, "Just wait." Saffron found that strange. They followed the little fish, who swam in a more or less straight line along the golden sand. Below him, the ocean floor became rougher, more rocky. A few more fish darted in and out of sight. Nick's admonition suddenly made sense as the little fish led them to their destination. It was a new world, one she'd never thought of from the shore. Below them was a cityscape of coral populated by the most beautiful creatures she'd ever seen. It was a delight for her eyes, colors even she'd never seen before. She tried to tell Nick, but there was no hearing each other through the mask and the water, so she just pointed urgently at a school of brilliant yellowfish, like gold coins swaying and turning in the little currents below them. It was like flying, gazing down on the inhabitants of a miniature world who were, for the most part, utterly oblivious to them. Saffron cataloged every color, the narrow scarlet and white fish, the sunset orange one. She let go of Nick's hand and carefully followed a brilliant azure fish as he skimmed along a small canyon in the coral. He led her over a coral hill right to the reef, where she was delighted to find lemon yellow fish, pink fish, and a school of bright white and black striped fish, grazing delicately. Around them on the rough coral were basketball-sized spiny sea urchins with foot-long spikes the color of eggplants. She wondered if they were as sharp as they looked. This whole world had been here all these months that she'd been on the island. She had never thought about what was beyond the surface of the sea that she gazed at every day. The fish came and went like the people in my eye. Little ones made way for big ones. Big ones skimmed along on their own urgent business. A school of bright orange and blue fish arced and swayed in a choreographed performance that seemed to catch the attention of several other fish, which were held steady in the current and watched them as if they were on stage. Saffron imagined that the spectator fish had shown up just to see the dance. She imagined little flyers and little fish cafes. Don't miss it. Tangerine Dream School recital. 2 ice blue fish swam side by side past the show, and Saffron followed them. A couple, on the first date maybe. They darted into a coral arch and were hidden from view, apparently away from prying eyes, or perhaps away from a bizarre fish that was approaching. About the size of Saffron's hand, the fish was all made of spikes and fans. It was striped from front to back with thin, radiating white stripes and thicker cinnamon ones. Along its back were 13 spines, each as long as Saffron's fingers. Its lower fins were as long as its body, and so wide they looked like palm fronds attached to the fish. It swam forward, toward Saffron, unafraid. She reached toward it, and Nick scrambled through the water to catch her and pull it back, catch her hand and pull it back before she could touch it. His sudden motion scared the fish, and it darted in the opposite direction. Nick pointed up the signal for Saffron to meet him topside. As they popped out of the water drained from her ears and sounds of the world returned, including Nick's muffled voice. "Don't touch those," he said. "I'm sorry. Does it hurt them? It'll hurt you. That's a lionfish, and those spines are venomous." Saffron curled her fingers into her palms involuntarily. "Venomous?" "Very. All those spines along their back have poison in them. I had a buddy get spiked by one in the foot when we were surfing, and he passed out. It was so painful." She could see lines of solemnity in his face. It was an unusual look for Nick. The memory must have been particularly unpleasant. Saffron's stomach nodded. "Wow, it was weird how he came right up to me, though. They're predators, so they're a lot less easy to frighten than most of the fish down there. I won't touch them," she reassured him. "In fact, I won't touch anything." Nick smiled, the severity fading from his features. "Okay, there's more to see, though. We have to go back down." Saffron stuck a little closer to Nick when they went back under, and she kept an eye out for anything spiky, prickly, or jagged. Though there were urchins and several rough-looking coral outcroppings, most of the sea life was bright, slick, and shining. Saffron felt a hand on her back and turned her head to see Nick, his face framed by his mask, smiling at her. She smiled back. He gestured toward a spot directly below them. Saffron looked. Vibrant fish, cobalt and pineapple colored, darted between them and the jagged coral floor. She nodded. They were thin and delicate, and she saw their beauty. But they weren't the flashiest she'd seen. Nick tapped her again, and she turned back, glancing at him. She read in his expression an urgency and excitement, and she looked at the spot again. Knobby coral, little fish, spiky urchins, until he reached his hand down slowly toward the ocean floor. Saffron gasped as a knobby protrusion of olive-colored coral abruptly transformed to a desert red octopus as smooth as a ripe mango. It had been perfectly camouflaged. It gathered its spread tentacles around it and rocketed away from them, navigating the narrow channels of coral with precision. How could she have not seen it? Could its disguise have been that flawless? She kicked, following it, and felt Nick beside her. The octopus settled down on an ebony and slate perch at the edge of the coral, tucking its long legs into the crevices. Saffron felt her breath quicken as the creature instantly changed to fit the surroundings. Its skin puckered to the exact texture of the reef. The brick red color shifted to patches of gray and coral. As Saffron watched, it disappeared. She blinked, looking for its edges and not finding them. She turned her wide eyes to Nick, who was grinning broadly. She looked again. The octopus was gone. Only she knew it wasn't. She knew that directly where she was looking was something she couldn't see. So the fun thing about a series that goes on for 10 books and more is that a lot of things that come up early come back later. And Saffron is constantly battling with this idea of what she can see, what she can't see, what she's blind to, and what other people can't see that she can see. And I think that that's one really fun thing about her as a character, is that we all have things that we can see more clearly than others, and blind spots.